Does trust lead to economic flourishing? That is the question we will explore today. Welcome back to Liberty's Hill, where we explore how can we create a world of human flourishing with liberty, justice, dignity, and prosperity. I'm Dr. Bill Brannan, a pastor in Liberty Hill, Texas. One of my favorite authors is Vishal Mangawati. In a couple of his books, he tells the story of a conversation he had on a plane. He spoke with another Indian man about the challenges he was experiencing in the Indian countryside. The man told him that he should come to Britain and be a businessman because it is easy to do business in Britain. Vishal inquired why that was so. As an intellectual, he was hoping for some deeply satisfying answer, but instead the man simply said, "It is easy to do business in Britain because they trust you." Fast forward to a conference in Western Europe where the gentleman putting on the conference asked him to go with him to get milk. They went to a farm, walked past the cows, opened the barn, filled a jug of milk, put the money in a basket, took their change and left. At that moment, Vishal understood what was meant by trust. He explained that if the producer could not trust the consumer, he would have to pay a clerk to sell the milk, adding to the cost of the milk. If the consumer does not trust the producer, then he will want a regulator to make sure that the milk is not being watered down. And that will also be added to the cost of the milk. In an untrustworthy culture, the regulator will want a bribe from the producer to get his license to sell the milk. The cost will also be added to the milk. Because of a trustless society, the price of milk is jacked up by what Vishal calls the cost of sin. The word sin, unfortunately, has lost its significance because it is often used in a highly negative way. It essentially means to miss the mark or to transgress the law. The term law is also often used in a highly negative way. Maybe a good way to understand it is that sin is not the way things should be if we want to achieve human flourishing. It is descriptive of a broken world. People understand, for example, when politicians are corrupt or business leaders treat employees like commodities for self-enrichment, that this is not the way things should be. If we use the analogy of a building for society, sin refers to a dilapidated building that is unsuitable for habitation. It is a condemned building. This is the best imagery to use when listening to Jesus say that he did not come to condemn the world, but to sozo the world, the Greek word that means save or heal. He said that the world was already dilapidated when he arrived, and that makes sense when we consider that the Roman Empire was the greatest totalitarian slave-driven empire the world has ever known, and the Jews at the time embraced a legalistic orthodoxy devoid of love that missed the mark with regard to the true essence and spirit of the law. My hope with that explanation is to find common ground. I think that everyone can agree that the world is broken and that we need to work together to fix it. My personal conviction is that the law is descriptive of a world of human flourishing, and that if we can successfully paint a picture of what rule of law actually looks like, then people can work together to build a better world based on that vision. I argue with America's founding fathers that self-government is the foundation of flourishing. And I think Vishal's story demonstrates practically what that looks like. It is a great object lesson in the law, thou shalt not steal. When I speak of the true essence and spirit of the law, what I mean is that we are meant to actually think about and understand the world the law is trying to create, not just try to obey the letter to feel good about ourselves for doing so. That usually leads to looking down on others who do not. It is all about the world we create together. For example, on a plane ride myself, I had a conversation with a lawyer who was an atheist, and he got excited about Scripture as I showed him several examples of the principles of the law as a foundation for flourishing. One of the examples we discussed were the gleaning laws, where the fringes of fields were left unharvested to provide food for strangers and those who fell on hard times. That creates a system where those who have fallen into poverty can go to the field, harvest food, and go home with their head held high because they were able to work for their food. The principle today would be that we must figure out how to help those who have fallen on hard times with a system that preserves human dignity. I once read a book that explained how the law is expressed through narrative in Scripture. We can see the value of this when thinking about Boaz, who was a wealthy business owner. We are told that his workers blessed him. The fact that they blessed him suggests that he treated them more like family and not like people to be used for self-enrichment. What an incredible picture of what the world could be like if we understand the essence and are true to the spirit of the law. It uses narrative to challenge us to wrestle with the idea of what it means to be a good person and defines it as treating other people well. The law paints a picture of ideals, of what a world could look like if we were all governed and motivated by love. As I mentioned in a previous video, I hope to create conversations around ideas that I believe are universal. For me to engage in the conversation, I use Scripture because that is where my expertise is. America's founding fathers, even those who were non-Christians, deeply valued the ideas and ethics of Scripture. They actually used federal funds to print Bibles to give to people because they believed that Scriptures express the highest ideals and purest ethics. Liberty flourishes when we have common ideals based on the law of love. That is the true inheritance and identity of America. When we lose those ideals, America degenerates. Unless we restore those common ideals, we will never build a better world. Circling back to trust and economic flourishing, I remember working on a banquet staff when I was young. Several of my coworkers also had a job at General Motors where they were scheduled to work on Sunday evenings. They liked Sundays because they were paid time and a half. They all went and punched in, drew straws, and only the person who had the shortest straw stayed to punch everyone out at the end of the shift. Everyone else left. Later, I worked a job where I was able to get an inside view of the audio industry, and I personally witnessed the culture that Vishal painted where there was no trust. I saw people sleeping on the job, being absent from their post, and theft at a level that is shocking. At one point, I worked with riggers packing up machines at an auto plant to sell overseas. The plant was not able to survive because of the amount of theft of time and goods. The workers were angry, but they did not realize that their behavior contributed to destroying the plant. The reason I told the story of Boaz is because I believe Scripture puts the highest level of responsibility on leaders. If the leadership acted like Boaz rather than tyrants, the work culture may not have been destroyed by the loss of trust. At the time, the nickname for General Motors was Generous Motors because of the wages workers were paid. That was not enough to inspire them to work in a manner that led to success. It shows that when people lose dignity, they lose their humanity and turn to self-destructive behavior. In many ways, the workers were emulating the behavior of leadership. At that time, I worked out at a gym where I overheard other members regularly griping about the corruption and pay of the corporate leaders in the auto industry. Then one day I heard them bragging about their job of test driving cars. Instead of working, they went into the woods every day and drank beer. Eventually, the company put GPS trackers in the cars, but they found them, ripped them out, and threw them on the roof and continued drinking beer in the woods all day. I decided to engage them in a conversation about the risk they were taking that one day they might not have a job. Their response was to justify their behavior by complaining about the corporate leaders. I explained that if we were to add up all of the theft of time and goods by the employees, it would dwarf the amount the executives were taking, and that together the whole system would collapse. They were both doing the same thing and were risking losing their livelihood. The way I see it, they had lost the ideals that lead to human flourishing. Without self-government based on the spirit and essence of the law, we cannot build a world of economic prosperity. The worker does not trust the employers do not trust their employees, and although there are laws against theft, the external law cannot bring prosperity because it did not penetrate into the hearts of people. Rules do not inspire us, but dreams do. We need to dream of a world governed by the ideals and values that lead to liberty and human flourishing. The more we can see what the world can be, the more we are motivated to create it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and please subscribe to my channel.